I take full responsibility for being 1 minute behind here. I thought I hit go live, but apparently I did not. So I hope everyone else is having a better Tuesday
We got
at
to
the
watch
moment.
the intro twice. That was nice.
What's that?
We got to watch
Oh,
the
yeah.
intro twice.
Yeah, definitely got to watch the countdown twice because I did not hit live there. But I just want to let you guys know this is going to be something that's going to happen weekly. So keep your eyes out on it. 3:30 on Tuesday and Thursdays. I'll be having Niner Nate here with me as we talk some 49ers football. Some of it's going to be current news, some of it's going to be ideas, and some of it's just going to be whatever the hell it's going to be. So Nate, thank you for joining me here on this fine Tuesday. How's everything going?
Of course, it's always good to join you. I feel like we see each other more than I see my own family at some points. We work together so much, so it's a good time.
That's a good thing, right?
Yeah, no, I like you. You're good. Everything's good. Here at the radio station, got everything done early, so just waiting to for that clock to strike 5 o'clock so I can get the heck out of here.
I hear you. So once again, if you guys have not yet liked this video, currently as we are live, subscribe as well as comment. Anything you do that can help out the channel that doesn't cost you a penny, I am very grateful for it. So let's go ahead and get into it. I don't want to bore you too much with all the advertising tax talk here. So this episode is going to be about buy or sell on certain situations with this San Francisco 49ers as it's currently constructed. No, I'm not going to say a buy or sell on who starts at quarterback. We have plenty of months to discuss that. And if you heard Nate and I on the Niners Nation podcast that gets released every Tuesday,
was up at 7 a.m.
You're going to get it there. You're going to get enough quarterback talk there. So this is just an extra platform for us to discuss other things besides Jimmy Garoppolo and Trey Lance. As you can see, Nate rocking his North Dakota State shirt saying QBU, even though I told him Oklahoma is kind of QBU, but
I don't care.
I'll let them have at it. They're an FCS school with 2 early first round quarterback picks. So let them have it. Who cares? Buy or sell, first topic here. Is the third wide receiver currently on the roster? It's been a big topic lately. There's been talks that say, hey, go sign Golden Tate. Hey, go. Jason Aponte said this morning of the Sprint Option podcast, who's also 49ers Cold Mine member. Jamison Crowder, that's an eye to look on if he gets released by the Jets because they have Elijah Moore. They have Denzel Mims, and then they signed Corey Davis this offseason. So they're kind of set at 3 wide receivers. They could go save some cap space by letting him go. And then also, Danny Amendola is a guy that I've mentioned for a while who kind of, if Jimmy's the quarterback, he definitely fits on what they would like to do with the offense. Nate, I'm gonna softball this question to you. Is there currently wide receiver 3 on this 49ers roster, as well as let me know your guys' opinion within the comments?
I'm gonna go with what we said on our show. Actually, I think the wide receiver 3 is going to be Austin Watkins. I really do. I think that Austin Watkins is going to be the guy who ends up filling that Kendrick Bourne role. I just think that it's still crazy that he fell to the undrafted free agency period. Because we were talking about him amongst ourselves as a guy that they could steal in the 6th or 7th round, and he could, fill that Kendrick Bourne role. And the thing is, when Kendrick Bourne came in, nobody saw him being as good as he was, and I think that some people actually undervalue how good he actually was when he was here. And so when you watch Austin Watkins, I just think that he has that potential to learn and get better within this offense, where he can fill that role. Because we obviously have 1 and 2 filled. And I like Richie James. Don't tell Kyle Berkowitz I said this, but I don't think he's that great. So,
oh, gosh.
Hopefully Kyle isn't watching. But, that's the thing is I think that it's probably going to be Austin Watkins. But if Hurd came back and, turned out to be this stud that we've all thought he is, then it could be him too. But I haven't really put my chips in the Jalen Hurd basket since last year, because leading up to this, accursed season of our Lord 2020, we had so much hype around Jalen Hurd and that he was going to be the third wide receiver and he was going to be the deep threat guy. That was before we even knew how good Ayuk was. Like, everyone was really hyped, and then he got hurt again. And so when you've been hurt back to back, it's hard to be like, oh yeah, my guy is definitely going to be Jalen Hurd this year. That's definitely going to be Jimmy's third guy. And so it's hard for me to say it's Jalen Hurd, and that's why I want to say, for me personally, I think it's going to be Austin Watkins, and that's where my money is lying right now.
Got it. Okay. So I think this whole let's go get a slot thing is kind of overstated in this way. Shanahan, for a long time, at least with the 49ers, runs a lot more 2 wide receiver sets than 3. You didn't make that debate, maybe a lot of coaches do in the NFL. But I'm talking about Shanahan with the 49ers specifically. Even if Trey Lance is the quarterback, I don't think they go to this crazy air raid offense where your slot receiver is seeing 35 snaps a game. So Deebo Samuel is a lot like Anquan Bolden. And Deebo Samuel can play that slot receiver role. He is really great at it. So saying they need to fill a need and think of like a Wes Welker type, Danny Amendola type is since I mentioned him already, I thought I'd just use his name. I don't think they necessarily need to go find a true slot receiver because Deebo Samuel can do those things. And just with the way he runs his routes, the way he maneuvers his body to put himself in a position to win early. The thing is with Deebo Samuel is he could play outside and inside. And that's what I look at with this 49ers roster is, okay, if they want to use Richie James Jr. as the third wide receiver, they could put Richie James Jr. in the slot. And when they want to use Deebo Samuel in the slot, you could kind of use Richie James Jr. outside, but I think that's more where we will see Austin Watkins Jr. is lining up more outside than inside. And I just like to state this because I feel like a lot of people go, oh, well, big slot receiver, because that's what we saw from Kendrick Bourne a lot of the times when he was in. I think they could get that from Austin Watkins Jr., but when they want a smaller guy in the slot, they could go Deebo Samuel or Richie James Jr. I don't think they're that hurt at wide receiver as a lot of people think they are. Because when you look at it, you have Deebo Samuel, you have Brandon Ayuk, then you have Richie James Jr., who's going to be on the team. I'm sorry, my fingers kept getting blocked by the mic there. Austin Watkins Jr., I really do believe he's going to make this team week 1. Then you have the other guys. I say those are the most forward locked, but then you have Trent Sherfield, will be a special teamer that you obviously need on your team at the wide receiver position. You can't have 6 wide receivers and none of them be, gunners or, out there on the kickoff team. So Sherfield allows that. And he was tied for the NFL in fumble recoveries last year on special teams. So, and then you have Juwan Jennings, who a lot of people liked last year. You have Jalen Hurd, who will, his name's always going to be in the mix because he was the best wide receiver in camp when healthy. And then you have Mohamed Sanu, you have Travis Benjamin. That's already 9 guys that we're up to. So I think they're set. They're set with what they have at the wide receiver. And when you look at Richie James Jr., compared to Kendrick Bourne, who I think he was valuable to the team. And it showed when he got released. Not released, but when he signed with the Patriots. And a lot of people were just like, oh my God, Kendrick, we're going to miss you. We're going to miss that guy. With Kendrick Bourne, he had an 8.1 drop percentage. Richie James Jr. was a 5.7 drop percentage. Lesser is better in this situation. And then a quarterback rating when targeted, Kendrick Bourne was at 92.6. Richie James Jr. was at 113.3. So I think Richie James Jr. is a valuable player to this team, and I think he could fill that role at least decently enough to where you don't have to go exercise more resources and more, capital to go sign somebody else. I like what they have there, and especially if you get the younger guys like Juwan Jennings and Jalen Hurd to contribute somehow, or at least be healthy enough to be on the roster, then they're absolutely set. Or, they have Trent Sherfield as their special teamer, and then Mohamed Sanu and Travis Benjamin if they decide to go with that veteran option. But I don't think there's anybody necessarily that they're going to go out and get right now that's going to be their wide receiver 3.
Yeah, I mean, like we talked a little bit about Golden Tate, and I think that, maybe you could go out and get him if he's cheap. But, when you list it that way and you talk about all the guys and how many there actually is, thanks, Nick. Lost my train of thought. How many people there actually is just, it sounds like they're probably pretty okay with it. And like we said at the end of the show as well this week, ideally Trey Lance makes those wide receivers better than Jimmy ever did. And so, we talked about Pringle and we talked about Mecole Hardman and how Mahomes makes those guys, like actual fantasy threats, which is crazy. Like maybe, Trey Lance is good enough to make Trent Sherfield or, even Austin Watkins like a fantasy guy that people actually want. So, I mean, I think you're right. And I think that, there's probably a chance that they could go get a veteran guy, but I don't think it'll happen. And that's what we just said.
Yeah. So, Zach, if you didn't hear yet, Nate already said he thinks that wide receiver 3 is going to be Austin Watkins Jr. I think you look at undrafted free agent, you think the guy's probably not going to fill that role. Well, Austin Watkins is a stud. I saw him in person. I got to shake the guy's hand at the Senior Bowl. He's a big dude, and the guy he just wants to work. From the conversations I've had with him, the conversations Javi Vega has had with him. Javi Vega, obviously my fellow co-founder of the 49ers Gold Mine and co-host of the Fourth and Gold podcast. He's been texting with Austin Watkins, and the dude is, he's just a dog, and he's ready to work, and he has all the athletic ability to get the job done. And I think he's going to come on to the team much like Kendrick Bourne did. Similar situation, undrafted free agent. The difference is I think Austin Watkins Jr. has a higher ceiling than Kendrick Bourne. Maybe Kendrick Bourne was more, say, NFL ready, but I think Austin Watkins Jr.'s ceiling is higher than Kendrick Bourne, and a lot of it has to do with his hands. I don't think Kendrick Bourne is that bad catching, like 49ers Twitter says, but Austin Watkins Jr. is even better than that. He had only one career drop in college, and he remembers that exact drop. And if you go look at a lot of his tape, ton of contested catches. There could have been plenty of more drops within there, but they didn't happen. He came through with those contested catches. So that's what gets me excited with Austin Watkins Jr., seeing him in person, seeing the athlete he is, seeing him at Senior Bowl week against better competition, or at least, better competition than what he was facing on a regular Saturday at UAB. He was facing against guys, like at Oklahoma. UCF is a pretty good football school now. He was facing those guys and winning on the regular. To get into the next topic here of the buy or sell edition, Richard Sherman. Should the 49ers bring back Richard Sherman? Because when you look at this cornerback depth right now, you have the starters, Emmanuel Mosley. I'm only listing outside corners because Sherman's not going to go play nickel. Emmanuel Mosley. Then you have Jason Verrett on the other side. You have your newly drafted rookie. And that's kind of it. Newly drafted rookie, Ambry Thomas. So, but then it's kind of dead at 3. So it's like, who's going to be your 4th guy in line? I would assume we want to avoid any type of Brian Allen situation happening in 2021. Mosley missed like 5 games from a concussion last year. Jason Verrett has had plenty. He looks like he's on the better side of that now. I think it should be brought to some concern. And the only issue is with bringing back Richard Sherman is you're bringing him back as a starter, not as a not as a backup or say a guy that's gonna come in off the bench if somebody else is not ready to go.
Sorry, I was celebrating another series win for the San Francisco Giants. No, I agree with you. I think that Richard Sherman should absolutely be brought back. If obviously, I think that the depth is an important part just because the team's been so injured in the past. But I think that he could be a good mentor, like he was for Mosley, for Ambry Thomas, and if they believe that Ambry Thomas could be a potential future starter for them when Verrett leaves, if he balls out this year, and they can't afford another contract for him. Having Sherman around just to kind of like teach the kid. Like I think that Akello is a much better player because of the fact that he worked with Sherman. It's just that Akello can't get over certain things. He something happens and then he kind of like he loses his mindset. Well, Mosley was an undrafted free agent, is put into this situation where he gets to get coached up by Sherman every day. And I mean, he's now a starting cornerback in this league. And so, ideally, you don't want Sherman on man, but I think Sherman can still play pretty good zone, and he's still smarter than most corners in the league. If you can get him with a pretty incentive-laden contract, I think that Richard Sherman coming back would be a great thing for the 49ers. Just like I think, just from any team. I think any team getting Richard Sherman right now at this point is just, it's super awesome because having a guy that is literally just the smartest dude on the field in every game is huge for young kids who are still trying to learn this, and learn this game, at the NFL level. And the fact that the 49ers are so young, it helps having, a couple veterans around. Like you have Trent Williams on offense to, help some of the younger offensive linemen we're going to see over the next couple of years. And you have Alex Mack at center as well. Well, on defense, who are your veterans? I mean, I understand we have All-Pro
You got Fred Warner.
But All-Pro Fred hasn't even gotten a big contract yet. Tart has never been that guy. Jimmy Ward never been that guy. There's none of those guys that are really proven veterans except for Sherman. And so I just think Sherman brings that mentality. And if they get back to the Super Bowl, give them all the money in the world, give them all the incentives. It just makes sense for Sherman to come back with the 49ers. He loves Kyle and he hates Pete. So I mean, it made sense for him to go to the 49ers over the Seahawks.
Yeah. So with Richard Sherman, I have to clarify this first. Last year was not good. He was plus 10% on completion percentage when targeted. He gave up more 1.1 higher on yards per target last year. And he gave up an additional 3 touchdowns that went to him when targeted in 10 less games than 2019. I don't think that's solely on Richard Sherman, though. I don't think he was healthy last year. I don't think he was healthy. His calf was pretty jacked up, and obviously it's been pretty stated since the Achilles injury has been pretty popular, is that the calf is connected to the Achilles. Richard Sherman, before he came to the 49ers, tore his Achilles. I think there was some type of connection in there. I don't have any confirmation with it, but I believe that would be to be true. So if you could get a healthy Richard Sherman back, I'm all for it, just because after Ambry Thomas, from your outside corner perspective, it's just really thin. And this, as the starters go, this is a top 5 roster in the NFL. And you don't want a bogus injury to a corner, affect your team from either becoming a 1 through 6 seed in the playoffs or missing the playoffs because you're 1 game shy. So it seems like the money's going to be right. Sherman has been a guy to take an incentive type deal. Maybe you could work an incentive type deal to where it's very little cap hit. I don't think it's going to have to be more than a vet minimum. But if there's an opportunity to get a job done that's not going to affect, say, a Fred Warner extension, other bigger needs within this team, If it's not going to affect that, then yeah, I think you could go ahead and sign Richard Sherman. And you know what? If it doesn't work out, there's other avenues you could go from there. Maybe you go, with Emmanuel Mosley now starting. Maybe you just end the relationship with Richard Sherman and move forward from there. That's if it doesn't work out. Um, how smart this guy is, I would imagine that it would at least work out for one more season with the 49ers. I don't think he's going to go from a Pro Bowl level in 2019. Granted, he was at a Pro Bowl level because the defensive line was at an all pro level. I think they could get similar production to that. I do have my concerns with it since there is no DeForest Buckner splitting double teams. Uh, I do think he
They're
could get
confident in
close.
to do that. Like that, John Lynch went on one of those radio stations recently and said like they're confident that that's what Kinlaw's going to do.
Well, yeah, that's the thing you're gonna say. If you're John Lynch, you spent the 13th overall pick on the guy, so that's something you will say. But it's you know like impact on rookies, so that you're not too concerned with Richard Sherman's health or is he gonna get hurt. Situations like that. It's just what other rookies do you have out there other than Ambry Thomas? Like you're literally after Ambry Thomas, you're super 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 thin. And do I think Richard Sherman helps? Yes.
Better than Dante.
Uh, the reason why I say yes is because I talked to Jamar Taylor, who was on this team last season, who's a current free agent, and Jamar Taylor has told me how much like Richard Sherman helps the team, prepare for a game plan. If there's something, this also with D'Amico Ryans being a new DC, Richard Sherman's been around a long time. If D'Amico is, he could go to Richard and be like, "Hey, this is what I'm thinking. What are you thinking? Like, can you confirm this with me?" And Richard Sherman basically, and he's an honest guy. He's a vet. He's earned his own, voice to say, "I think that's not going to work," or say, "I think it is going to work." That's the thing that he's able to provide for this team. But I think they need the depth, the mind, the knowledge. That's just an added, you know, bonus to it. You don't base the knowledge on whether you're going to sign the guy or not. That's just something that's added into the signing. And I think where they are at corner, I like Emmanuel Mosley, but gosh, it just concerns me if they lose one of them at the outside corner.
I don't want to watch Dante Johnson play football. That's how I feel about it.
I'm like okay with
Johnson as a guy. I think he's a good dude, but I don't want to watch him play corner if they get injured. I'd rather
like he's fine against average receivers, at least last season. I don't want to state like I'm a Dante Johnson stan. He was fine last season against average receiver, but then once he, played against better competition, like say Cole Beasley, who was one of the better slot receivers in the game last year, when he played against Cole Beasley, he just got ate up. But if he's like I think he was better at kind of slot corner anyways than outside corner. But yeah, I would rather see like Richard Sherman out there and have Emmanuel Mosley backing him up, and then see Dante Johnson out there also with the Richard Sherman playing safety. I think you're kind of stuck if you have Jaquaski Tart and Jimmy Ward, because why would you want to take one of those guys out from their safety duties when they're really good at it? So that's I think he would have to come back as a corner, not a safety.
Yeah.
Next topic here. Yeah. Go ahead. Finish it up.
No. Yeah, no, you're right. People keep saying like bring Sherman back as a safety. I don't understand that argument at all. So yeah, I totally agree with you. I think they should bring him back. I think it's just incentive-ridden contract, and I think you bring him back, and I think that this is probably his last year, to be honest with
you. I promise, Nick, I'm not wearing a Dante Johnson shirt under this or jersey. So buy or sell, 49ers should add
a guy who has a Dante Johnson jersey. I actually know him.
Oh, geez. 49ers should add another edge rusher to the mix.
Depends on how much you're gonna have to pay for an edge rusher. I mean, I think, yeah, I wouldn't say no to having more edge depth just because that's such a huge part of what they did in 2019. And I think that having great edge rushers already, and then when they get injured, having better, not better, but having decent edge rushers underneath them is a huge part in this team staying, the course and being able to compete all year. I just don't. The problem is they don't have a lot of money if Jimmy's on the team. And so, like, that's the thing you have to think about is, like, where's the money coming to sign edge rusher? Because no matter what, edge rushers tend to cost a lot more than other position players in free agency, no matter what. And so, yeah, I'd love to have another guy, but I think that their depth is really good with getting DJ Jones back. And I mean, I think is Ronald Blair on the team? I'm trying to remember. Not
I think
right.
something happened there. Yeah, something happened with that signing.
He's not on the team.
It's not official.
Okay,
No.
I thought he was there as well. But like, the depth is there. I like the Ebucam being there for D Ford if D Ford isn't there. But I mean, like, I've heard all offseason that D Ford's coming back. And so, that's a good thing for the 49ers.
Yeah, I heard that he's gonna come back as well, but it's basically, are you gonna put your eggs in that basket?
Well, they're not. They're putting the eggs in the Samson Ebucam basket. That's where their eggs are. But I'm saying, like, think about this. Nick Bosa, probably the second, third best pass rusher in the entire league. Javon Kinlaw, they hope becomes DeForest Buckner. They drafted him 13 overall. Eric Armstead's still really good, no matter what Twitter tells you. Samson Ebucam is a decent edge rusher who's going to be better on this team than he was on the Rams, most likely. D Ford comes back. He's still a really good, really, really good edge rusher if he can stay healthy. DJ Jones, people don't realize how good he actually was.
And well, DJ Jones is an interior. We're talking edge here.
Well, I'm just talking about the D line in general. But I'm just saying, like, and then they also got that, not Kerry Hyder. Obviously, he's a Seahawk. But what's the name of that other guy they got? The one that they signed in free agency. They got
Jordan Willis, who they got from the Jets last year.
No, not Jordan Willis. There's one more. I'm trying to think. There's another roster.
Zachary Kerr.
Zachary Kerr. Yeah, like, they liked him. They brought him in as an edge rusher. I mean, their edge rushing depth is pretty good. No matter what, if you lose Nick Bosa, your edge rushing, your talent on edge rusher is just going to take a hit no matter what. And so the thing is like, do you want to spend money and get another guy when you're still going to have that hole there if you lose Nick Bosa? And that's the question they kind of have to figure out and ask themselves. I think that I'd rather have another safety personally. So
Maurice Hurst as well. That's another Maurice guy that's should be mentioned in that conversation
Arden Key.
Yep, we have Zach and Ron. They definitely both put Key down here. So I think I like Melvin Ingram as Nick commented earlier. I just think he's going to cost a little too much.
Yeah.
But if you could get me a Justin Houston, an Everson Griffin, or a Ryan Kerrigan for in the market between $5 to $7 million, I'm all for it. That's a situational pass rusher. And for myself, I want the D-line to get back to 2019 as much as possible. We saw the effect that defensive line can do with that secondary. And the way you're able to work, say, a Justin Houston, a Griffin, or a Ryan Kerrigan, with Samson Ebukam already being on the team, this is how you do it. You could put Samson at Sam. That Samson, Sam. It kind of works out. So to where Samson Ebukam's in your base defense. The reason why that works is because he's very athletic. He could drop back in coverage. He could also rush the passer. It creates more of an exotic look rather than having Azeez Al-Shaair out there. Azeez is, he's a fine player, but I just think Samson Ebukam could enhance that Sam linebacker role. And then if you have him in your base defense at Sam, you're able to go ahead and start, say, a Justin Houston, an Everson Griffin, or a Ryan Kerrigan on the other side of a Nick Bosa. Or have one of those, like a Justin Houston, start while you're ramping up Nick Bosa or maybe sub him out because Nick Bosa is not going to come out and play 60 snaps from, week 1 through week 4. He's not going to. So if you can add me one of those three names, Melvin Ingram to me would be like the pipe dream, but I just don't see that happening. Get me one of those three. I am all for it. Get me back to 2019 as much as possible. You saw what happens when they play the MVP and Aaron Rodgers. They completely just folded him. And then when you look at the competition in the NFC, it's Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady. Those are the main two. And those guys are going to fold against an elite pass rush. So if you can add another guy to $5 to $7 million, which Everson Griffin costed only $6 million last year, Ryan Kerrigan is still unsigned. I'm assuming he's going to cost around $6 million as well. Same thing with Justin Houston, since he is a little bit older. I would love to go get one of those three guys.
I think that people underestimate just how good the defensive line is because of Chris Kocurek. And I think that one thing we noticed is as soon as Chris Kocurek came in, we started noticing that these guys who were, decent players were getting a lot better. And I think that it's underestimated. Like people say, Arden Key's meh, Maurice Hurst is, decent. I think these guys are going to be even better under Chris Kocurek. And that's why I think what the Niners are counting on and why they don't want to go out and spend money on a Melvin Ingram or a Justin Houston. They want to force the Seahawks to spend some of their money on that stuff. And I think that that's their plan is, to go with guys who have, elite traits, have talent, and have the potential to do something. And then let their, elite defensive line coach get a hold of them and mold them in the way that they want them to go out there and kill, the quarterbacks they're going to see this season.
Right. Yeah, it's like say Kerry Hyder. I was someone who was like, Kerry Hyder, but then he obviously had 8 sacks when he was with Kocurek in Detroit. But after those 2 years in Dallas, I was just like, I don't think he's going to get 8 sacks again. Yet he went out there and he just had a motor that was unmatched, and that's how he was able to have so much production. So it's just with Kocurek, you never know who's going to be his next, say, project that ends up as a pretty good player. But I think Houston, Griffin, or Kerrigan, like even those guys are pretty good vets. And like Raymond said, it's like injuries, as well. It's you sign another edge rusher, you're not so worried or hopeful that D Fort's coming back. You sign another edge rusher, you're not so hopeful that Nick Bosa is ready to play 60 snaps again. You're able to ease in his recovery process and gradually increase the snaps by the week because you have a valuable person like a Houston, Griffin, or Kerrigan compared to a Deion Jordan who plays peekaboo. Sometimes he's there, sometimes he's not. Well, at least with Houston, Griffin, or Kerrigan, you're going to get a little more consistency. Yeah, I butchered that, but it was okay.
It wasn't the worst. It was okay. I mean, I've heard people say Takiera. So but yeah, no, I agree with you. Like, I just don't want to spend a ton of money on free agent D linemen. I'd rather spend it on, corners and safeties.
Well, I'm saying if I had to choose between an edge rusher, like one of those three, if I got my choice on, say, John Lynch called me personally and said, "Hey, Leo, we need you to make this decision."
Yeah.
Contract on the table for Kerrigan, contract on the table for Richard Sherman. Both are equal. Who are you going to take? I'm probably going to go Kerrigan.
Really?
I see more value from an edge rusher.
I'd probably take Richard Sherman. That's me. I just think that having that veteran presence is really important. And I guess Ryan Kerrigan is a veteran as well. I just think that Sherman's been with this team. Sherman's been to the Super Bowl with this team. He understands them better than anybody, and I'd rather have him on this roster than, Justin Houston or Melvin Ingram. As much as I like those guys, and I think they'd be decent on this team. It's just
so you're taking a little sentimental route.
I like Richard Sherman. I don't know. I can't help it. I really like Richard Sherman.
You might as well pull up the selfie that you took with Richard Sherman. I know it's right there in your camera roll.
I was really fat then. I don't want to post that picture right now.
Hey, that's okay. That's okay. No. This is not a body shaming podcast, so that's okay. Buy or sell. Bring back.
Sell buy with any of these. We've just been talk.
I have.
Have you said buy or sell? I haven't.
Well, I believe the viewers have have received our buy or sell based on the conversations. So how about you kick us off here? State it. Buy or sell. Bring back Ben Garland.
Buy or sell, bringing back Ben Garland. So on this one is interesting because I like Ben Garland. He's a decent football player. He's fine. He's whatever. But I think that role is gone now because I think your Mac is your starting center, right? And I think that Aaron Banks will eventually be your other guard. I think that Brunskill's depth is a depth piece now, and I like Daniel Brunskill a lot, but I think he's a depth piece. I think he can play center. He can play guard. And I think ideally the 49ers want Aaron Banks to start because they hope he can have more consistency with Mike McGlinchey, which, in turn would help them in the long term. But I think that Daniel Brunskill's kind of stolen that roster spot that Ben Garland would have, been there for, and he won't even make the team. I mean, you can bring him in and try out and see what happens in, camp. I love competition. Don't get me wrong. I think it's super fun. And I think that like Brunskill versus Garland versus, Sean Coleman or whatever will be fun. Like, cause it's, people battling for their spots. People are battling to make a football team. People are battling to, have a job for 17 games. And so that's good, but I just don't see a way that Ben Garland beats out Daniel Brunskill personally. Like Brunskill's not like the best guard in the world, but I still think he's a really good guard. And I think that having him on this roster is more flexibility because Garland didn't really play guard. He was the center and he was the backup for Weston Richburg. And now they have Mac and we know Brunskill can play center if need be. But I mean, these are hard. Some of these are hard because I probably would bring him back, but at the same time, I don't think he's making the team.
Got it. So we got some people agreeing with you. We have Zach who wanted to sell on Ben Garland. Basically, what you were stating with that trust within Brunskill. Nick as well, sell on Ben Garland, and Raymond likes the depth we have at offensive line, which it is pretty solid depth wise. But I'm gonna be on the opposite end here. I'm gonna say buy Ben Garland services. Only for this reason. If Tom freaking Compton has a roster spot as we sit today, May 11th, I need Ben Garland to at least have a roster spot because if there's a world where Tom Compton makes this roster and then ends up seeing and then I have to watch him start at guard. No, I don't want to be in that reality. I would rather have Ben Garland take a roster spot and have that depth there with a Ben Garland than I would with the Tom Compton. So that's the only reason I'm buying here. The points you made about Daniel Brunskill, as well as Zach made in the comments about Daniel Brunskill, is that it's right on cue. But with Ben Garland, at least get him in camp, whether it's a camp body or not. Yeah. If you have Tom Compton on the roster, I bring me Ben Garland.
I just really
because like Brunskill's flexible anyways. Like Brunskill could play center, he could play guard, he would play tackle, but I am on the train that Brunskill should focus on one position set. So that's the only reason why I would sell Ben Garland, because if you buy him, then Brunskill's going to be all over the place again. But if Tom Compton has a roster spot here, like at least give my guy Ben. I think he posted something the other day saying his grandpa was like a original 49er because he was out working in California and stuff like that. But yeah, Carlos, for sure, Garland over Compton all day, every day. But that's the thing is, I just, like we said, I mean, like, yeah, if he's on for a camp body, totally, yeah. But I mean, how many of these camp bodies, aren't even going to come close to making the team? Like, I like Brunskill. His story is really good from the AAF, all that stuff. And I feel like he has that work ethic that the Niners are looking for. That kind of guy that, is going to come out there and work his butt off and play any position he needs to make sure that there's an offensive line in front of Trey Lance every single week. And I think the Niners like that. And I think that's why Brunskill pretty much is guaranteed a roster spot. I just think that because Brunskill is guaranteed a roster spot, there's, bringing in Ben Garland, there's probably a good chance he doesn't make the team. But hey,
If he makes the team over Tom Compton, I'm 100% down for it because I don't want Tom Compton on this football team either. A guy, people talk about how bad they think McGlinchey is. You watch Tom Compton, and he's actually that bad. Like, he's actually people think like McGlinchey is. We talk about you used to clown on me on our show about concrete feet. Whew, Tom Compton is concrete feet times 1,000.
Yeah, he's bad. So that's the only reason why I would buy Ben Garland. Last topic here. It's going to be buy or sell. 49ers trade a veteran running back. What I mean by veteran running back, it's Raheem Mostert, as Wayne Gallman, Jeff Wilson Jr. They drafted 2 running backs in this draft. So now if you add the 2 rookies, you're looking at a handful of running backs in the room. They're not going to put a handful of running backs on this 53-man roster. So are you buying this or are you selling it?
You're just doing this because I said it on the show this week.
Absolutely.
I think Trey Sherman is the starting running back of the San Francisco 49ers this year. And I think that's not a hot take. I think that you draft a guy, that high, and in the way the 49ers want to use him, I think that he's a little different than Mostert. Obviously, Mostert's a speedster, but I think Trey Sherman has the feet down. So a lot of people continue to say he's Kamara. It's not that he's Kamara. I don't think he's anywhere near Kamara. I think Kamara is like one of a kind. And I think, you could totally keep Mostert with the Sherman and do the 1-2 punch thing. But I think that Sherman is fast like Mostert. I'm trying to think how I want to phrase this. Sherman, if you watch the film, he's very much like a cut type of guy. Like, if you watch some of the stuff he did at Ohio State, and then even some of the stuff he did when he was in Oklahoma, he's very much he's more like, I think you said it to me the other day. We were talking about this, and you said Cam Akers. And when the Rams finally started using Cam Akers, you saw how good he was in that type of scheme. And I think we're going to see how good Sherman is pretty quickly, because I still think there's a chance they trade Mostert. And I think they have shopped him from things I've heard and just like the way they've talked a little bit since the draft. I don't know if they're getting what they want from Mostert, just like they didn't get what they want for Jimmy Garoppolo. And when they tend to not get the stuff they want, they just end up paying the contracts and say, F it. And I just think that Sherman is the future of this team at running back. Like, I just think that that's why they drafted him where they drafted him. I think that Elijah Mitchell is going to make it harder for other people to make this team, because like Hasty, like we talked about on the show. But I mean, if the running back core was Mostert, Sherman, Wilson, and Elijah Mitchell, I wouldn't be mad. I just really like Hasty. I don't think Wayne Gallman's making this team, personally. I think that they could trade him for like a 6th or 7th round pick after the preseason because they know he's not making the team. But I wouldn't be surprised if they trade Mostert, but I've leaned more towards I wouldn't want them to, but it's up to the 49ers. If they believe that, they can go out there and win with Sherman and Sherman can be the starter day one, then I'm going to take Kyle's word for it, just like I took Kyle's word for on the Trey Lance over Justin Fields thing. Like, it's definitely a only Shan situation, and whatever Kyle says goes for me. And that's the way I've kind of geared my fandom since Kyle's taken over, because the guy is as a genius. He knows more than any of us do. And so it's ultimately up to him. But I think that Sherman is going to be the starting running back of this team, if not this year, then next year.
That's fair. And Raymond said it here is like reverting Mostert back into a complementary running back role and have Sherman say start the game and carry that load. Basically like Tevin Coleman did with the 49ers in 2019. Tevin Coleman started those games and carried that load. Raheem came in with his speed and just was too fast for this defense, and he was walking at 6 yards a carry. But I'm going to sell this. Yeah, what Nick said was what's good as well. I'm going to sell this. I don't think they trade one of those running backs. I think one of those running backs are going to get cut. And I think that running back is going to be Wayne Gallman. So they're going to go with Raheem Mostert, Trey Sherman, Jeff Wilson Jr., and Elijah Mitchell. Hasty is the odd man out for me. They'll try to get him on the practice squad unless somebody else offers him a 53-man roster spot. Someone tried to sign him last season, but Shanahan had a heart-to-heart with Hasty, and that's why Hasty stayed with the 49ers instead of taking a roster spot somewhere else. But yeah, I can definitely see Sherman starting out games, and then Mostert coming in and playing that complementary role and walking for 6 yards a game again, and hopefully it's against the Packers, and then he could rush for 300 yards this go around. But I just don't think they get rid of Mostert. What he does is just completely different to what Jeff Wilson Jr. and what Trey Sherman do. Those guys are more one-cut power running backs compared to Raheem Mostert's more of a finesse running back. He's a one-cut as well, but he has outstanding vision, and he's cheap. That's the thing. He's so cheap. Yeah, he got that extra money, but that extra money is still less than $4 million per year. Yeah. And even if Sherman and Jeff Wilson Jr. is the 1-2 punch, which I doubt it be, or just say Sherman and Elijah Mitchell is the 1-2 punch. Well, now you have a Pro Bowl gunner on special teams in Raheem Mostert. He just offers you so much. His Texas route against the Arizona Cardinals week 1 last year, like that's his speed there. Too bad for the hold against McGlinchey week 2 against the Jets. He bust out like an 80-yard run there. So he just offers so much when healthy, and I think getting a guy like Trey Sherman is going to help keep Raheem Mostert more healthier. But when you look at it, it's Trey Sherman, and then his backup is going to be Jeff Wilson Jr. And then you got Raheem Mostert and his backup for his. I'm saying the backup for their roles and what they do with the offense. His backup in his role would be Elijah Mitchell. So while I do like Wayne Gallman, I think he's a fine player, but I just don't think he beats out the other guys. A lot of it is, knowing the playbook and knowing the roster. Jeff Wilson Jr. also does, run very good routes out of the backfield as well. We saw him get like a 20-yard catch in the Super Bowl against the Chiefs, and we obviously the game winner against the Cardinals, and he could run routes. So I think that he's going to have the advantage over Wayne Gallman. And yes, Andrew, the San Francisco Giants won.
Like if they keep Mostert, I completely understand why. It's because they believe that the whole running backs getting hurt thing all the time is going to go away, because ideally they have 4, running backs who all do 2 and 2 basically. They do 2 that do the same thing and 2 that do the same thing, and they believe that it won't be a situation we see because we don't have a guy like a Derrick Henry who you can, or any of those kind of guys you can just rely on only him to win games. Like we don't have a Nick Chubb type guy, even though I kind of see some Nick Chubb and Trey Sherman tape a little bit, not like all the way, but I'm just saying we don't have that kind of guy. And I think what the 49ers want to do is they don't need, or do they? I don't think they really want to have a running back who they rely on all the time, only one guy, because Kyle wants to do a bunch of different stuff all the time. And so with doing a bunch of different stuff and having a million different running backs, it's going to allow you to keep healthy more often, or at least that's what I think Kyle's thinking. He just wants to have a healthy running back core. He wants to have his running backs out there healthy every week. And I think the Trey Sherman pick will help with the fact that Raheem Mostert literally gets hurt every season. And Jeff Wilson has gotten hurt every season. And so, like having guys who are, aren't high picks has done that. And I mean, obviously I don't know a ton about Elijah Mitchell, but I think that him also being similar to that, Raheem Mostert role is good for them, because, there you still have that Raheem Mostert, I guess I want to say ability, but that Raheem Mostert, what he brings to the table ability, despite the fact that, Raheem's not out there all the time getting a million carries and potentially getting hurt, when this team is so reliant on coming out, running the ball down your neck, and then letting Trey Lance, throw the ball every once in a while. And I think that's what their game plan is going to be, because they think going into this season, and this is going to be a little long-winded, but they think going into this season that this defensive line is going to be good enough where they can go in there, punch someone in the face, get the ball back, run the ball on 1st and 2nd down, get it to the point where 3rd down is, 3rd and short. Trey Lance doesn't have to do a ton. He could even run it himself, or, get it to Kittle, yards after the catch with Debo, anybody really. But that's going to be their game plan this year, because at the same time, if, in a world where Trey Lance starts the first game of the season, they're not going to put a lot on his table right away. It's going to look similar to what we see with Nick Mullins and CJ Beathard. But I think the difference is just you're going to see high skill and high talent doing that, where it's going to happen a little easier. And I think he's going to become a better quarterback faster as the season goes on, where we're not sitting there watching Nick Mullins become worse as time goes on because he's reached his ability ceiling. Because there were, we noticed, 2 or 3 games into the Nick Mullins experiment last year, he had reached his ability ceiling. Well, Trey Lance, being the 3rd overall pick and being as smart he is and having, the legs he has and the arm he has and just all the talent in the world, right? His ability ceiling won't be reached as fast as a Nick Mullins would. And so what Kyle will be able to do is, having a stout running game, having a great defense, is going to allow Trey Lance for longer term success with, I think less, less complicated play early in the season, at least. Sorry, that was really long-winded, but that's kind of my point to make.
No worries. So Zach, I think the only issue with Elijah Mitchell being cut for the practice squad is I don't think he'll make the practice squad. I think somebody would offer him a 53-man roster spot, especially a team like the Jets. If you could, how they would look at it is saying, hey, this guy's a 6th-round pick, and he just spent an offseason learning the 49ers playbook, which is very similar to our playbook with Mike LaFleur being over there now. It's why wouldn't they just go get Elijah Mitchell for dirt cheap? So I think that's the only issue with cutting him and throwing him onto the practice squad. But it's, I think that's where they go is, like I said, Trey Sherman, Raheem Mostert, Elijah Mitchell, and Jeff Wilson Jr., Wayne Gallman being the odd man out, and JaMychal Hasty hopefully on the practice squad. A team may not try to put JaMychal Hasty on the practice squad. Only reason because he had a season-ending surgery. So he may feel comfortable rehabbing with the 49ers and staying within that offense. And, he's someone that trusts Shanahan. Like I said, he turned down a roster spot with an unnamed team last year just to stick with Shanahan and the 49ers. So I don't think he'll go anywhere. I think he'll just end up on the practice squad. And I do believe they carry 4 running backs and a fullback, making it 5 total from that backfield room. I believe they have done that in the past. If I may be mistaken, but I believe they carried 4 running backs and the fullback in the past.
That Jets thing you mentioned, I didn't even think about that, Leo. That Jets factor does scare me, because anybody the 49ers cut that they want to put on the practice squad, I think the Jets roster is pretty trash. And so I think that there's a chance that a lot of the guys we cut that would normally go on our practice squad right after will go to the Jets to go be with LaFleur, because it's, it's such a similar system. I thought that would happen with Green Bay more often, and it never did. But I think with the fact that LaFleur probably knows Kyle even better than his brother does, I think that that's going to be something that scares me when we get to cut day. We get down to the 53, is that, we're going to lose a lot of guys who potentially could go to the practice squad and be good later on to the Jets. And, Zach Wilson and that and Robert Saleh.
So last year, actually, they kept 4 running backs. Last year, their 53-man original 53-man roster was Tevin Coleman, Raheem Mostert, Jerick McKinnon, Jeff Wilson Jr., with Kyle Juszczyk at fullback. So they did it last year. I think they could definitely do it again, especially when you spent a 6th-round draft pick on Elijah Mitchell. You spent a 2nd-round draft pick on Trey Sherman, and then you went ahead and brought back Jeff Wilson Jr. when you didn't have to. You signed Wayne Gallman when you didn't have to, but I think Wayne Gallman's the odd man out. A lot of it has to do with playbook, and he's only 1 year on the team compared to 4 years like Elijah Mitchell is. Well, we got our running back talking. I appreciate all of you guys. This is probably where we're going to close it out here. If you have not yet, just go ahead and hit the thumbs up, please. I would appreciate that. And if you have not yet subscribed, I don't know what the hell you're doing. Go ahead and subscribe. Nate and I will be doing this every Tuesday and Thursday at 3:30 p.m. Pacific time. So, once you're getting close to that 3:30 mark Pacific time, go ahead and look out for us. Nate and I are going to be hopping on live. I will be back tomorrow myself at 3:30 Pacific time. So Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, we'll be going live here at 3:30. I look forward to seeing each and every one of you in the comments. Appreciate you.
I'll be live on Niners Nation tomorrow around 5 o'clock for the schedule release. So,
oh yeah, schedule release tomorrow.
Be there.
We'll be on Niners Nation to where you can get all of their live reactions, and hopefully it's a little better than Nate's reaction when the 49ers made the pick at the third overall position. He looks like he's doing better now with his QBU.
It's my guy, Trey. We're gonna win a Super Bowl. It's happening.
Appreciate you guys.
We'll see you. Make sure you listen to